For anyone on Zoom, could you just let us know if you hear us okay?
Can hear you just fine.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. We will call the Fast Planning Policy Board meeting here at about 12 o'clock, Global 1. We'll say, we'll do introductions around the table and we'll go online for our online policy board members. So let's start with Ms. Rutherford.
Yeah, Brett Rutherford, Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly.
Joe Kemp, Northern Region Director for DOT.
Mike Welch, Mayor, City North Pole.
Bryce Warren, Fairbanks North Star Borough. Jackson Fox, Director of Fast Planning.
Olivia Linsberg, Transportation Planner with Fast Planning.
Jared Theor, City of Fairbanks. All right, and online, Mr. Olds.
Jason Olds, State of Alaska Air Quality.
All right, wonderful. And Mayor Cruz is not with us, but if he joins us, we'll let everyone know for folks that are online. Let's move then to our approval of our February 15th agenda. Do we have a motion on the approval of our agenda?
Mr. Chair, motion that we approve the February 15th, 2023 agenda.
So moved by Mayor Welch.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Roman. Do we have any discussion on our agenda? Not seeing any. We do have folks online, so we'll do roll call vote. Mr. Fox, if you would call roll on the agenda.
And Mr. Cleaver. Yes. Mr. Irwin.
Yes.
Mr. Kemp.
Yes.
Mayor Welch.
Yes.
Mayor Ward.
Yes.
Mr. Olds.
Yes.
All right, our agenda's been approved. That brings us to the minutes of January 18th, 2023. Do we have a motion on our minutes?
Mr. Chair, make a motion to accept the minutes as recorded for January 18th, 2023 meeting.
So moved by Mayor Welch.
Second.
Second by Ms. Roderman. Do we have, Ms. Roderman, do we have any discussion on our minutes? All right, I'm not seeing any. Mr. Fox, can you call the roll on our minutes?
Yep. Mayor Welch.
Yes.
Mayor Ward.
Yes.
Mr. Cleaver. Yes. Mr. Irwin.
Yes.
Mr. Kemp.
Yes.
Mr. Olds.
Yes.
All right, our minutes of January 18th have been approved. That brings us to our committee working group reports, including the chair's report. Mayor Fox. Mayor Fox.
Switch. Decrease in salary.
All right, Mr. Fox, if you would start us off at the.
Sure. So Olivia, go to page 14. Just a few highlights for the past month here. Underneath project and planning meetings, Fast Planning staff have been participating in the Alaska Strategic Highway Safety Plan update. There have been a couple focused area meetings on younger and older drivers, as well as motorcycles and ATVs. So we're actively participating in that statewide plan update and providing our input from the Fairbanks local area into that process. Also want to note, we did attend the third Transportation Advisory Committee meeting for the Tetland to Fort Knox Kinross ore hauling operation. I will say from that meeting, there was a lot of public testimony during that, so there was not a lot of work that was actually accomplished with DOT and the consultant team. However, the consultant, Kinney Engineering, that's working on that project has completed their negotiations with DOT, so they have a approved scope of work and budget to work with. So we hope over the next month or two, we'll start to see some of the work unfolding on looking at that whole plan. And then under correspondence communications, as you see on today's agenda, I did draft a comment letter to the US EPA on the partial disapproval of the state implementation plan for air quality for the 2.5 non-obtaining area. So that's going to be item 8A on the new business and will be an action item for you all today. On the next page, I want to note that we have received payment of annual dues from all member agencies. So we got annual dues payments from both cities, the borough, and the state of Alaska. And then, as you may have seen in the newspaper and on social media, we did have a sign-in event here at Fast Planning to become a pilot regional planning organization with the DOT commissioner. And included in this section of my report, I do have a copy of that cooperative agreement that we signed for you all to take a look at. For public outreach, we have received our draft air quality conformity analysis for the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and we have released that for public comment as authorized by the board. The public comment period is running from January 22nd to February 21st. So that has been posted to our website. Availability of that document for the 30-day review period is in the newspaper as well as the state and borough online public notice systems. I also want to note that I did attend the borough's Air Pollution Control Commission meeting and provided testimony at the beginning of that meeting to notify commission members of the availability of that draft analysis and the opportunity for that body to provide comments to fast planning on the analysis. We also held a interagency consultation on the draft air quality conformity analysis with the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, borough staff, as well as Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation staff on February 8th to present the draft, the findings in that draft analysis to our federal, state, and local partners and offer opportunity for them to ask questions and provide feedback. So, from that meeting, what I gathered was that they were comfortable that the analysis was done thoroughly and that the results are accurate. So, but those agencies also have opportunity to provide comment to us by February 21st. So our next meeting, I'll be bringing that forward to the policy board for approval and show you any comments received, how those were resolved. And then lastly, for my staff report here on the funding side, as you're aware, we have an open call for project nominations for congestion mitigation air quality funds, as well as our new carbon reduction program funds. And we have been working with a lot of stakeholders throughout the community and assisting them with their project applications to fast planning. We are anticipating receiving applications from each of our member agencies here at the table. But I wanted to note here that we have been working directly with the Ferguson International Airport, the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center, West Valley High School, the managers of the downtown parking garage, Boulevard Parking Services, and Max Transit on their applications to assist them with completing those, since some of the questions are quite technical. So that concludes my staff report, but I did want to go over a few action items from our past 3 meetings over the last month real quickly. So let me go to the next page. Just as a reminder, the policy board members, these are your action items from the January 18th meeting. At that meeting, you did authorize me to release the draft air quality conformity analysis without your advance review, and that has been completed. You also asked me to draft a letter for the EPA's Federal Register notice on the partial disapproval of the state implementation plan. So that letter is in your packet here today. And then related to the 2 documents that motions were made to adopt at our last meeting, which was the 2023 through 2027 Transportation Improvement Program and 2045 Transportation Plan. There was motions to adopt those with some amendments, but they were postponed to this meeting. We are actually going to postpone them until next meeting because this body has to approve the air quality conformity analysis alongside those 2 documents. So those will come back to you at your March meeting. All right, so next page, page 17, the Bike and Ped Advisory Committee meeting that was held on January 26th. Two quick updates here. We have drafted a scope of services for the transit plans updates for Max Transit. And we brought that through both the Bike and Ped Advisory Committee and our technical committee. They recommended approval of that scope of work at today's meeting, board level, without any revisions or amendments. They also drafted a letter to the technical committee and policy board about the FAST improvement program, and specifically providing at least $1 million funding for that program in federal fiscal year 2027. So these items, both of these items went to the technical committee on February 1st. See, let me go to the next page. This is the letter that the Bike Advisory Committee wrote to you all. But it's on the agenda today for the discussion, so I won't go over it in detail. But on the next page have the technical committee action items for February 1st. And for action items for you all here, they did recommend that the policy board today approved the letter that I wrote to the US EPA on the partial disapproval of the state implementation plan. They also recommended the policy board approve the scope of services for the transit plan updates without any revisions or amendments. And they did go through a few funding increases on the Airport West Bike and Ped Facility project, College Road bus pullouts, as well as an increase for the FAST improvement program in 2023. which includes College Road Crosswalk, Second Avenue Dog Park, and Aztec subdivision, area road resurfacing. We were able to find a way to fully fund the 2023 program by transferring leftover funding in the design phase to the construction phase. So the 2023 Fast Improvement Program is fully funded at this time for its construction. So that project will be ready to go out to bid here soon. And then lastly, the technical committee members' recommendation to you all based on the letter received from the Bike Committee on the Fast Improvement Program was to kind of table that issue at this time and then take a look at that issue with future amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program, but not to actually provide funding for it at this time. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, beginning on page 20, you'll see a copy of that cooperative agreement that was signed between Fast Planning and the state of Alaska to form a pilot regional planning organization for the Fairbanks North Star Borough. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. Do we have any questions from the policy members? Anything on climate controls? All right. Not seeing any questions. We'll move next to our public comment period. This is for non-action items. Do we do a sign up sheet? I don't think we had so many people in the room with us today, but
Yeah, this wasn't necessarily expected. We don't have a sign-in sheet. I believe there might be folks that want to provide testimony here today, but we also have 10 written comments that we were planning to read into the record unless the chair feels otherwise. But we do have 10 written comments in addition to folks in the room.
for non-action items.
I believe so.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll go around the room here first, and then I know we've got a number of folks online as well. I'll just kind of start from one side of the room and work my way around. If you don't want to provide comment, that's totally fine for this particular public comment period. But I do want to make sure we get everyone. So we'll start up here with Ms. Fletcher. Do you have a comment?
Yes, but Mayor Ward, could I just ask, I think it might best inform the policy board if Brad St. Pierre provided comment first. I think many of us are here to speak about the crosswalk for the farmer's market. Do you mind if he testifies first? He's on Zoom. If not, I'm happy to go.
No, I just was thinking we go around the room here first for folks that made the time to come. So
Yeah.
We can start. It doesn't look like we have a whole lot of folks online. We'll start with folks online first. Let's do that. So, Mr. St. Pierre, would you like to start us off, and then we'll work down our list here?
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Brad St. Pierre. I'm the general manager of the Tanana Valley Farmers Market. Just to tell you a little bit about our market, we're the oldest continuously operating farmers market in the state of Alaska. We're located at 2600 College Road. We have an amazing following from our community, and we are interested and in support of this crosswalk going in to increase parking. We have negotiated with the owner of a property across the street at the corner of College and Caribou Way to lease or purchase the property to increase the parking at our farmers market. The farmers market parking lot is notoriously full, which is a great problem for our market, but we're trying to increase access. And it's currently already happening that many people park across the street and cross College Road to come to the farmers market. But currently there's no safe place to cross College Road between the fairgrounds and the university. And so we feel for public safety, installing this crosswalk is an important improvement for the safety of our community. 4 years ago, we actually did have someone hit while leaving the farmers market crossing College Road. And not only for access to more parking for the farmers market, but there's recently bus pullouts installed on both sides of College Road. And to give people safe access to bus connections, like I said, there is no safe crosswalk between the fairgrounds and University Avenue. We have increased our parking. I would listen to the recording of your last meeting, and there was a reference to some trees that were on the property at the farmers market. Well, that satellite picture is a little old. The majority of those trees have already been removed to increase vendor parking. We left a small buffer between the market and the neighboring homes on the backside of the market. So there are a few trees left, but not very many. And so we have done what we can with the property that we have to increase access. And this crosswalk, I think, is an important improvement to support a community asset like our farmers market.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Do you have any questions from policy board members? I'm not seeing any. Thank you for your comments today. Going next down the list, Kimberly Diamond, do you have any comments today?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lance Roberts, you're next.
Yes, my comments are strictly on an item in the fast improvement program and agenda item 8C. So I assume that I would need to wait till that time to give them.
That would be correct. I can call you for that item 8C.
Thanks.
All right, looks like next we have Layla Pyle.
Yeah, I do want to make a comment during this time. Thank you. So I'm here to speak in support of the crosswalk by the farmers market. Also, I was made aware that this committee was funding that project or considering funding that project. And I just think it is also a really important asset for the community. Sounds like Brad and the farmers market has really done their homework on their side of making the parking expanded. But just in general, I personally feel this way, and I know a lot of people I've talked to as well, just that use College Road as a really important corridor for walking, biking, getting to work, driving, trying to get to the businesses along that corridor. There are no crosswalks, as far as I'm aware, between University and Aurora, which is like a pretty big, almost 2-mile stretch. There's a number of bus stops along that stretch, but no crosswalks. So College Road is like, in my opinion, I bike on it. It's kind of a safer bike route across town, and having safe places to cross is really important. And I'm definitely one of those people who has like dashed across the road to use the farmers market as well, personally, parking on the other side of the street. So of course, it was support our local businesses and all the patrons of the farmers market, making it easier to use for lots of people. And just in general, in terms of like improving our infrastructure, making our community safer, I really support that. Support that project and hope that you guys continue to move forward with it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any. Next, we'll move to Mars Renner.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Mars Renner. I am in favor of this crosswalk. I also speak for an organization that I'm associated with, Morningstar Ranch. It's parallel to the farmers market. We are both in favor of this crosswalk because we believe it would provide necessary accessibility to a community food source and the other local shops on College Road, potentially increasing patronage of these local businesses. Crossing from side to side from Morningstar to the farmers market is kind of dangerous sometimes because it's a 4-road infrastructure, and some of our clients, they don't all like walk at the same pace. So it's a little scary trying to get them all across the road. We believe that adding a crosswalk or multiple crosswalks would be a win for disabled rights. We deserve the ability to confidently and safely be pedestrians on College Road along with the rest of the community. And that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from policy board members? All right, I'm not seeing any. Next, I have Sean Tackey. Mr. Tackey, do you have any comments today?
His microphone might not be working, but he did say in the chat, no comment, by the way.
Oh, okay, great. Was there anyone online that I missed for public comment under item 6, non-action items? do a final call here. All right, I'm not seeing any, so we're gonna then move around the room and we'll come back to this Fletcher and we'll start to work our way around. So if you don't have comment, that's fine. Just I'll make sure we get everyone. So please start.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor Ward. So yes, I'm here also speaking in favor of the Fast Improvement Program's College Road Crosswalk project. And I know you all were discussing this last month, and I realized that instead of moving it to this month for the vote, like I thought with the motion, it's next month. But just so we can plant the seed, I really think this should remain within the funding for the TIP. We have the funds, as we just heard from Jackson, and it's really important to the whole community. I would point you guys back to, I think it was either the December packet or January, but it has all the public comments. It must be the January one from that public comment period on our TIP funding. And you had 38 votes for the crosswalk and none against it. That was the highest that any individual project got in terms of support, and over 20 individual comments in that packet alone. That was pages 23 to 24 if you wanted to go back. I just think also today we're hearing huge community support for it. And this really seems to me to be the epitome of an instance where you have someone like the farmer's market trying to do it privately, trying to find responsible parking. They're in fact one of the few, only farmer's market in Alaska, but one of the few in the whole country that owns their own property. Most markets set up on a parkland and then they rely on government park maintenance and the parking around there to run at a farmer's market. Here we see someone doing it all privately. They're trying to get a contract to buy parking space, and they're just asking for the government to help with a safe crosswalk. And I really just admire the work that Brad has put into this and that they're taking it upon themselves versus having more parking in front of people's driveways and homes, which was causing some disruption and just unrest and frustration for everyone with the farmer's market. So I really see this as an instance where we can help let private business continue to grow. So many different farmers, including some here today, use that market to sell their wares and really as a base to grow from there. And it's super important for food security. But beyond that, also, I just think this project, we've done the work, we've put in the time. Brad met with Fast Planning, with DOT and with the borough back in November, I believe, and really hashed out the details here. DOT and the borough have done pedestrian studies. They found it meets the threshold requirement to have a crosswalk there in terms of the amount of usage. And I think with the bus pullouts, we're only going to see more usage there year round. I also just wanted to clarify a few things about that level of usage. I think last month I heard someone say the farmer's market is once a week for maybe 4 months. It actually runs May through September and is twice a week. So you have a huge increase in pedestrian traffic at a great frequency there, but also just the regular bus and like Morningstar Ranch, as we heard Mars saying, where folks are trying to cross regularly. Those 4 lanes of traffic are really scary. I've spoken to many families recently about this who say these days if they can't get parking on the farmer's market side, then they just try to come back later. And that's losing business to our vendors there because there's no way to cross. And I don't blame them. I don't want them to risk crossing traffic. I've done that run before, but now I have a newborn, as some of you know from earlier meetings. And I don't really want to take that risk with a baby trying to run across the road. So these are just some of the reasons I really think we should support this. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I had. Just the last point, which I know will come up for the action item 8C today, but it's really important to keep this on the list. We're about to go out for bid for construction projects for this summer. And if it doesn't get funded in this TIP, then there's a chance that, as you know, we might get frozen into the projects we're committed to right now. And I would hate to see us let down the community, let down the farmer's market and other businesses along College Road by not approving this now and then losing the chance to in case our federal funds are frozen. So thank you.
Right, thank you. Do we have any questions from policy board members? Not seeing any. I'll go to the next member.
Sure. Hi, my name is Clay Benitez Fletcher. I run Fairbanks Farm Access, which provides advocacy and legal help to small farmers in town, and I'm supporting the crosswalk. So leaders in this community say they want to help local businesses. They say they want to keep Fairbanks safe. They say they want to help farmers and ranchers thrive so that these people can have a livelihood from what they make with their own hands on Fairbanks' own soil. And these leaders are in luck. Local farmers and entrepreneurs have a specific ask that will help them meet every one of those goals, a simple crosswalk at the farmer's market. I work with all farmers and food producers in town, and every one of them says there is a need for this crosswalk. everyone, one of them knows that the headache of parking at the market alone leads some people to spend money elsewhere, let alone the safety risks in crossing. And so when your own community's farmers and entrepreneurs ask for their leaders' help, especially when it is such a low cost ask, it seems a no-brainer that you would provide it. To say no to the crosswalk is not to remain neutral or cautious. True caution would mean we put this in yesterday because of how many market goers are crossing the street. No, to say no to the crosswalk is to actively block the best and most industrious folks in your community from getting something they say they need, from wanting to keep their jobs here and wanting to do the work needed to make this camp what you, the leaders, have promised it would become under your watch. So finally, I would just say to remember that we should rejoice and celebrate. This is a good thing. The need for a crosswalk at the farmers market means local businesses are thriving and they're just asking you guys to help them expand. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from our policy board members? All right, let's see any.
Hey, my name is Colin Christensen and I live in Fairbanks. And I am a wild foods forager and a hydroponics farmer. I run a cooperative that runs both of those businesses. And I'm also here to support the crosswalk. If you guys have visited the farmers market, it's pretty obvious that we need it. And if you have driven down College during farmers market hours, you'll notice that there are cars parked in the middle of College Road, like at a dead stop. And that's super risky. And I've also almost hit a car like coming up too quickly because I didn't realize they were stopped trying to turn into an overfull parking lot. So I also have this elder friend who's super health conscious and like loves eating fresh food and like prefers local food, but he doesn't even bother going to the farmers market precisely because it's too crowded and it's easier for him to just get his stuff at Safeway. But Safeway and the box stores aren't providing food security for us in the same way that people that are living here and are able to produce food are. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer. And also, if you guys look at the SEDS that was published this last year, during the agriculture sub category, a screenshot of it here. Strategies 1 and 2 is increase food security, and number 2 is support farmers. So this is like a no-brainer way. Also, if you read this, the FEDC, Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation, they did a survey last year also, and they interviewed farmers, and they said that like the #1 thing they need is more community participation. They need support from the community to buy local more. So anyways, that's about it. And also I'd like to reiterate something that Brad told me once, which is that if you're super fortunate, you only need a doctor and a lawyer a couple times in your life, you need a farmer 3 times a day. So you should definitely, it's no brainer. Thanks for listening.
All right, any questions for our policy board? Thank you for your testimony. Yes, sir.
My name's Steve Horsfield. I'm new to the Fairbanks area. I do a lot of cycling. I'm familiar with College Road and the farmers market. And I would just say that it makes good sense from the biking point of view and the pedestrian point of view. And I'd just like to support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
My name is Glenn Rissy. I'm here to support the crosswalk. I'm a board member of the Fairbanks, the Tanana Valley Farmers Market. I personally have tried to negotiate leases with property owners around the farmers market to accommodate our parking. One of my jobs is to field all the complaints and things that come in from the public. We get a lot of people who parking is our biggest complaint. They don't have enough parking. We can't get in and out. In an effort to try to alleviate the parking, I spoke with the neighbor adjacent who also owns the Peak Pit, and we almost came to an agreement, but in the end, it was just too many demands made on us and we couldn't fulfill all his demands. So we started looking across the street. There was a piece of property that came up for sale here last year with 2 homes on it. The engineer's report had so many things wrong with it that were going to require us, if we were to follow the law, be legal, it was going to cost us too much money. So we passed on that, but we did talk to the neighbor across the street along Caribou, and she has been willing to lease it, and now she and her husband decided they just want to sell. We are really looking for an opportunity to have that crosswalk so that we can safely cross people back and forth. We hope to add at least 30 to 35 more parking spots, which is huge. If the people can turn left or right and get off College Road and punch a button and cross safely, we feel like it would just be a boom to our business where, parking is already at a premium. And we did remove a lot of trees so that we could push our vendors back further into the woods per se. We had some of our vendors who would park down closer to the woodway, but we've alleviated that. And I'm not sure if you can see, but a lot of the trees that are still in that photo have been removed, and we've actually expanded our blacktop so put more vendors in. Everybody who sells items at the farmers market are selling their own items that they created or produced or value added. And so it's all your neighbors and your friends selling their wares at the farmers market. It's been successful because we provided them a place to sell at a reasonable rate. And we're looking at hoping you'll push this project through so that we can have safe access across the road. I'm not familiar with your agenda and how everything works. I'm assuming that there's some sort of a vote today, or you're pushing it off till next week or next month? Next month. So please, try to push this through if you can for us. It would really help us out.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from policy board members?
We do have a plot plan for the lot that we're purchasing, if you're interested in looking at it.
If you'd like to get a copy to Mr. Fox, then we could certainly pass that out to members. All right, next, yes, sir.
I'm Birch Pavelski. I use the farmer's market, and I'm here to advocate for a crosswalk near the farmer's market, but not just a crosswalk. I would like to see a crosswalk very much like the one across University Avenue near Old U Park School, one that has lights above the road to impress on drivers that it's a serious crosswalk, that they must stop. And then when the red flashing lights go on, they can continue driving carefully. So that's why I'm here, and I hope you move forward with this item, and I hope that you could afford to build a serious crosswalk like I just described. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for policy board members? All right, I'm not seeing any. Yes, sir.
Hi, Axel Van. I don't have much to add that hasn't already been said about how this would support our vibrant farmers market, but I guess I would just also add that along with all the bus stops are in that are in that area and along College Road, a crosswalk would also potentially help to impact us on our winter months as a reminder for people to be moving a little bit slower with the ice right now and the potential for people to need to cross. It's just as dangerous as we see in the summer when we have the higher density with the farmers market. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I think that's all of our members that are here today to provide testimony on our now non-action items. So we'll close public comment.
So Mayor, we're real quickly here. So we do have, we did receive 10 written comments for the meeting here today. 2 of the folks did provide testimony just now, but we do have 8 remaining. Would you like me to distribute these to policy board members, or would you like these to be read into the record?
If we could maybe get copies and distribute those to policy board members, I think that might be a good use for tonight. Okay, so. All All right, unless there's any objection. All right, I'm not seeing any. So we'll close our public comment period and we'll get a copy of those sent to us. For those folks that provide a written testimony. For our business today, we'll start with old business, item 7A, call for project nominations for congestion mitigation and air quality, CMAQ, and carbon reduction program. Applications are due February 17th. This is a general update. Mr. Fox, if you would give us an update.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Ward. So here's the overall schedule for our latest call for project nomination for congestion mitigation, air quality funds, and carbon reduction program funds. Just a reminder to all our member agencies, applications are due February 17th. So that's Friday of this week. And following receipt of those project nominations, early next week, we'll be transmitting those to Federal Highway Administration, Alaska Division Office, to do an eligibility review for each project that was nominated to make sure that they are eligible for those two sources of funds. Following that eligibility review, we do plan to disseminate them to our technical committee members for scoring. And then concurrently, our third-party consultant, Trinity Consultants, will be doing the emission benefit calculations for each of those projects. But real quick here, page 26 in the packet. I did put together a list of all of the project nominations that I heard by phone call, by email, by in-person meetings. These are all the project nomination ideas that we may receive project nominations for. There's a total of 26 on this page here. But as you can see, that all of our member agencies, the two cities, the borough and the state DOT, all have a handful of applications that they plan on submitting to us, as well as some other outside organizations, including the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Max Transit, West Valley High School, Golden Heart Parking Services, Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center, and the Alaska Railroad. So I was happy to see a lot of interest in this funding program and a lot of innovative ideas that people came up with. As you probably are all aware, it is difficult to come up with a transportation project that leads to a measurable benefit in air quality. So here's a list here. You'll kind of see scattered throughout a few themes. There's a lot of interest in electric vehicle charging stations at different public parking lots throughout Fairbanks and North Pole. There's going to be a couple nominations for new roundabouts, one at West Valley High School, and then one up near UAF with the Sheep Creek Road extension with its intersection with West Tanana Loop Road. A few nominations for some additional motor vehicle plugins, as well as a few nominations for some subsidized transit ticket rides, something that we have funded in the past for UAF, such that population groups will be able to ride the bus for free. So, but you can look through this list. I think it's pretty interesting what folks came up with. And, I'm excited on Friday to get all of these in the door here. That concludes my update inside.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Questions, Mr. Cleaver?
Yeah, thank you. So what's the procedure from here, Jackson? Is it a technical committee for, how are they going to be evaluated?
So again, each nomination that we receive in our office, it first goes to the Federal Highway Alaska Division Office for an eligibility determination to make sure that the project that was nominated we're allowed to spend those federal funds on that particular project. After we get that back, I'm expecting at least one, possibly two of these to come off the list that I believe that they may not be eligible for this program. But after that eligibility review is done, all of these applications go to the technical committee, the full committee, and we have a 2-page score sheet that they have to score each of these projects on. And then once we collect all of their scores, we will average those scores and then put them in priority order from highest score to lowest score, and then bring that list back to the technical committee for any adjustments or their blessing, and then it comes to the policy board, and then you guys can change that order however you see fit. But there will be an objective scoring process that we will present to you all. But you can, as we did this last round 2-3 years ago, the policy board is empowered to modify the rankings of each of those projects in that list.
So about midsummer?
On the schedule here, I'm anticipating that in April, the policy board will be able to look at and make motions and amendments to that list.
It's fast.
We work fast.
Fast planning.
That's kind of in the name. All right, other questions for Mr. Fox?
So under the city of North Pole, the third one down, dump truck, sand spreader, tire and rentals, what am I missing here? What was that?
From myself, Mayor, through the chair. That truck is from 1991 and it's never had new tires.
Yeah.
On it ever. And now the only way to do it is replace the rims and the tires. It's very minimal, but it's very necessary because we actually go out and do things in collaboration with Mr. Kemp, to try to collaborate, do what state DOT doesn't always have the time to do. My public works are very good at that. That's all they're looking at. Yeah.
Say buy a new one, then it'll take 2 years to get.
Yeah, we can't afford to buy, but the truck still runs. It's just the tires and the rims are worn out.
I think the rims are 20s, and I don't think they make them anymore.
Yeah.
So. All right, other questions for Mr. Fox? All right, I'm not seeing any. We'll move on in our agenda to 7B, which is the draft 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP Air Quality Conformity Analysis. It is our release for public comment period, and I believe this is just an update. Is that right, Mr. Fox?
Yes, just an update.
So if you would please.
Yep, as shown on page 31, we have released this draft air quality conformity analysis for a 30-day public review period, which began on January 22nd and will end next Tuesday on February 21st. We did post this in the newspaper and the borough and state online public notice systems, as well as Libby has done some social media to advertise its availability. And again, I did testify at the borough's Air Pollution Control Commission meeting to make them aware of this public comment opportunity and share with them some of the findings that are included in the analysis. Also, as I stated in my staff report on page 32, we did host an open public meeting, which was an interagency consultation on this draft analysis with our federal, state, and local partners, so that our consultant could present the findings to each of those agencies, and we allow opportunity for questions and feedback on that document in that meeting. And again, there was no major concerns raised during that. On page 33 shows the agenda for that meeting. You can see at the bottom there the folks that attended the meeting. So we had good representation from everybody at the table concerning this document except the EPA. So, which the EPA doesn't technically doesn't have to approve this document. It gets approved by the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration. But the EPA, through a variety of emails, has confirmed receipt of the document. They are reviewing it. They did assign a staff member to this meeting, but they were not in attendance. So in any event, this meeting was held as required. And the draft analysis is included in the meeting packet. I'm going to give you guys all the cliff notes here on the draft analysis. So page 34, it shows you the cover page of the report. But Olivia, if you go to page 43 in the packet. So this draft analysis, what it does is it looks at our travel demand model and for our long-range metropolitan transportation plan, looking at how our transportation network will be built out and grow over the next 20 years. It also takes into consideration our population growth over the next 20 years and what our vehicle fleets may or may not look like, but also any known land use changes that we may experience over the next 20 years with development of new subdivisions, retail areas, et cetera. So all said, this model looks at our growth over time in that 20-year span, and then it calculates what the projected emissions would be for the motor vehicles that are on our road network. And, on this page in particular, I just want to note that you model how much emissions you're going to have, but then you have an EPA approved budget for how many emissions that we can have. We compare those two numbers to make sure that we're underneath that budget. So the budget for the Fairbanks non-attainment area for PM 2.5 in particular is 0.33 tons per day. And this budget was approved with the moderate state implementation plan for air quality, which is the only approved air quality plan for our area at this time. Because as you're aware, and we'll get into this on the next item, the serious state implementation plan that was submitted to the EPA was partially disapproved. So we do not have to rely on those budgets at this time. We rely on the moderate state implementation plan budgets, which is again 0.33 tons per day. All right, Olivia, if you go to page 48, you'll see throughout this document how we incorporated the Kinross ore hauling truck activity into this air quality analysis. That was specifically requested by the EPA that we include in the model those additional trucks that will be on our road network. And in particular, we modeled years 2024 with the start of the operation, 2028, which is what's been advertised by Kinross as kind of the end of the operation there. But the data that we use in consultation with the EPA is what we consider the worst case scenario of 192 round trips per day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year with double trailer truck configurations, 120 feet long and up to 80 tons each in that model. So, and this is a kind of an over assumption because these are the largest statistical numbers that have been provided by Kinross, but we understand from Kinross it will actually be less trucks and the trucks will be a little bit shorter as they're refining their trucking plan there. But those are the inputs that we put into the model, as well as we used the preferred route that Kinross and DOT have worked on. The trucks to travel through the non-containment area along the Richardson to the Mitchell Expressway, then north along Pegger, and then east along the Johansson, and again north on the Steves Highway. So there might be some alternatives to that whole route that come up, but again, based on the information available to us, that's what we included. All right, so here's the outcome of this analysis is on page 67. All right, so for PM 2.5 there in that table in the middle, you'll see those budgets I mentioned previously for PM 2.5 and nitrous oxides. So again, the PM 2.5 budget is 0.33 tons per day, and you can see that our test results below that are well below that budget at 0.05 tons per day. And specific to the Kinross haul operation, Olivia, if you'll scroll down a little bit, the second to last paragraph. Small paragraph. Yeah, that one right there. If you want to know what the Kinross trucks, how they have impacted these test results here, as you can see in this paragraph, the Kinross truck activity will increase motor vehicle emissions by 2% for PM 2.5 and then 8% for nitrogen oxides. So it is an increase to our vehicle emissions in our area. I wouldn't consider it a very large increase, but still, when you add the Kinross trucks to all the other motor vehicles on our roadways, we are still well below our motor vehicle emission budgets. And then last, page 70, to see this in a graphic format, everything I just described here. So I did put together this graph here so that people can understand this information in a little bit different format. But you can see on the top there in blue, which is the moderate state implementation plan budget at 0.33 tons per day. This air quality conformity analysis that we just completed, this is something we do every 4 years. So back in 2015, our test result was just below that budget level. You can see below that in green, the proposed serious state implementation plan budget. So this is a budget proposed by the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, the EPA, which at this time is one of the partial disapprovals in the air quality plan by the EPA. So even if those budgets end up getting adopted at some point in the future, you can see our test results on our last go around in 2019 and our current test results in 2023. We're still comfortably below both the moderate and serious budgets there. And there's a few different reasons for this. The EPA has updated their model, but also, as you'll see in the draft analysis, what we're seeing here in Fairbanks is actually a slight reduction in vehicles on our roadways, which we thought was interesting. So this comes from DMV records, but also, you know, as we look at this from year to year to year, there are new vehicles that are getting mixed into our fleet on our roadways, and newer vehicles and the federal government's, you know, control or standards of those, of the emissions that are allowed to come out of the tailpipe of those vehicles has improved over the years. So we are getting cleaner and cleaner cars into our fleet, and we actually have a few less cars in our in our fleet here locally, and which can be attributed to stagnant or negative population growth and COVID and other factors. So anyways, I think that this helps tell the story of the findings if you don't want to read the 42-page document. And that concludes my update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. Do we have any questions? Mr. Roderman?
When the trucking analysis was done, what, do you know how many approximate miles per gallon these trucks get, or what's that factored into the model, the fuel burn rate of these vehicles?
So in the model that our consultant uses, there's kind of stock vehicles with specified engine types. And I believe the trucks that are being used by Kinross are actually cleaner and more fuel efficient than what the stock choice is in the model that the EPA provides to pick that for the model. So again, what we used as assumptions was worst case scenario compared to what actually will happen. So and I don't know what the actual miles per gallon or what the tailpipe emissions of that vehicle was, but anyways, we were trying to be very conservative in that analysis and pick something that is likely would likely produce more emissions than what the Kinross trucks will.
All right. Looks like online, Mr. Olds, did you have some clarification on the Sirius SIP?
Oh, just to the comment earlier that Jackson made that the Sirius SIP has been partially disapproved. It's a proposal. The final action hasn't occurred.
Good. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Fox? All right, I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on to our next action item. Our next item, which is an action item, it's the long and short range transit plans and coordinated human services transportation plan. It is an action item. So we will have another opportunity for public comment on this item after our introduction. Mr. Fox, if you would please give us the introduction.
Oh, let's go to 71. All right, so beginning on page 71, at the direction of the policy board, I did.
Oh goodness, I'm sorry. Yeah, I missed that. I jumped right down to B. So read the letter, the disapproval letter. So go ahead, please.
All right, we're at, item 8A on page 71. So at the direction of the policy board, I did draft a comment letter to the EPA in response to the Federal Register notice on the proposed partial approval and partial disapproval of the state implementation plan. And I came up with a 7-page letter for your consideration here today. And I'm going to go through a few of the bullet points here on the screen, but just for everybody's reference, these comments came from my review of the Federal Register notice, which was 40-some pages long, as well as a technical support document, which EPA staff provide further background on why they approved or are proposing an approval or proposing a partial disapproval of different sections of that Sirius state implementation plan. So I had those two documents at my disposal, as well as there was many citations within the Federal Register notice on various final rules that the EPA has published that they used in their evaluation, as well as the Clean Air Act itself in 1970, which I read from start to finish. So anyways, those are kind of the background documents. It did take me about a week to come up with this letter here, and there was a number of things that I would consider alarming that I picked up out of my review. And so I will go over those in summary here, but not go through every page of this letter for you. But the way this letter is formatted, beginning on page 71 here, I bullet out some of my findings in my review. And then for each one of those bullets, there's a corresponding section later in the letter that provides greater detail and granularity as to why these statements were being made. So I'll just go through these initial bullets here, and then we can talk about the letter at large after that. So the first bullet is that in the state's Sirius state implementation plan that was submitted to the EPA, there was many transportation control measures that the state included that they rejected pursuing those transportation control measures because they would have limited or no benefit to the PM 2.5 levels in our area. And for a few of those measures that the state rejected, the EPA said, well, you can't reject those based on limited or no reductions in PM 2.5 levels. If those measures are feasible to be implemented locally, then they must be implemented without any discussion about the cost to the community of those measures. But then you look into later sections of that same document, and they went ahead and approved the state's rejection of other measures that also stated has limited or no benefit to PM 2.5 levels. So there was inconsistencies in the way in their approach into reviewing the individual transportation control measures. And I found in two separate cases, which I cite, they were directly contradictory in their determination. So again, those are highlighted later in the letter. That's just kind of an overall bullet point. I'm hitting that home with the second bullet there, that based on their disapproval of some of these, it appears that the EPA is asking the state to implement transportation control measures that have limited or no benefit to PM 2.5 and without any regard to the cost to the community. So we might spend $10 million in something that's not going to change our PM 2.5 levels, but we have to do it if it is feasible to be done. So anyways, that's a very important point, a very important takeaway from the Federal Register notice. Then next, the EPA looked at the proposed vehicle emission budgets for the Serious State Implementation Plan, and they outright stated that they were precisely quantified. They were clearly identified, and those budgets were developed with the appropriate consultation with the EPA. But they went ahead and disapproved them anyways. Because of the previous section, they disapproved some of the transportation control measures. So until the transportation control measure section is approved, then they won't consider approving your budgets. But the sections that were not approved, again, are measures that have no measurable benefit to PM 2.5 levels. So it's kind of a futile exercise in saying that, well, if we adopt these, then our budgets come down lower because they have a measurable impact, which the state has determined they will not have a measurable impact. So that makes it feel like the EPA wants us to spin in the loop on these two items hand in hand together. All right, and then the next bullet there, the EPA does not provide any credit to our community for the $2 million in investment with congestion mitigation and air quality funding. We just talked about this earlier on the agenda. And as you're all aware, we spend $2 million a year on transportation projects that improve air quality in our area. They consider that investment voluntary. But if you look at the federal regulations, the expenditure of these funds in our area is required by federal law. For all of the congestion mitigation and air quality funds that the state receives, if you have a PM 2.5 non-attainment area, 25% of those funds must be spent in that non-attainment area. And that's why we have $2 million a year to invest into these projects here. But again, the EPA doesn't provide any credit for the things that we're actively doing. And next, I get into a few political statements here. I'm just bringing to the attention that the Clean Air Act of 1970 was largely written at a time when there was visible smog in large cities throughout the US, where air pollution from vehicles was very visible and was tied to health problems of residents in these areas. And so at that time in 1970s, the vehicle emissions were a problem, and they were the primary source of the air pollution in these urbanized areas. So they had a corresponding enforcement action that if you don't clean up your air, then we're going to withhold your federal highway money. There's a direct correlation between those two back in 1970. But then if you look at the EPA website, and you can see it on 5 or 6 different of their web pages, they keep touting these statistics that through the Federal Motor Vehicle Control Program and standards for manufacturing vehicles, the vehicles on our roads nowadays are 99% cleaner. And this is passenger vehicles, trucks, buses. They're 99% cleaner than they were in the 60s and 70s. And for our area, motor vehicle emissions are only 6.8% of the PM 2.5 contribution. So I'm making the point here that we have an old enforcement action or old sanction on the books from 1970s that they're still trying to use. Though there's no correlation between our air quality problem here locally and vehicle emissions. So they're focusing on, they're using the hammer on our federal highway funding when I don't believe it's appropriate because it's not correlated to our problem here locally. On the next page, 3 more bullets here. That making the statement that if the EPA does use this hammer, it is going to directly impact the Alaska DOT as well as fast planning. And DOT and fast planning have no control or influence over other emission sources that are actually causing the problems. So, wood stoves, power plants, things of this nature. In our sector, managing the transportation network, DOT and fast planning have no control over these other sectors that are actually causing the problem. So we're not being held harmless in this. And this is also kind of a political statement. The next one, that really, when you look at this all from a 30,000 foot level, it makes the appearance that the EPA is not truly invested in helping solve the problem if they're attacking this sector, which is not causing the problem, and not focusing all of their efforts on the highest emission source categories. And then lastly, this is a lot of complaining in the letter, right? But lastly, there is something that we're asking the EPA to do as a potential temporary solution for us, and that would be the EPA to issue a protective finding for DOT and fast planning to eliminate the possibility of conformity freeze. But the only way that they can issue a protective finding for us is to approve those serious state implementation plan budgets, and then have us turn in that analysis document that was in the packet showing that we're going to meet those budgets. But they have to approve the budgets first, which right now they're not approved. They approve those first, we give them the analysis, and then they say, yep, this is, as long as you're underneath your budgets, we'll issue a protective finding and we will not put you in a conformity freeze. I don't believe that gets us out of jeopardy of federal highway funding being frozen 2 or 3 years from now, but it does buy us another two or 3 years of not being in a conformity freeze, and then we can maintain our ability to amend our funding plans, like our transportation improvement program. So these are all kind of general points, and then there's much more detailed information for each of those bullets in the subsequent pages. But Olivia, if you go to page 74. You'll see at the top, I included that graph that I presented earlier in the meeting. And I describe in detail here the required $2 million investment per year in congestion mitigation air quality funding to the non-attainment area. And now on the next page, I show the EPA over the past 10 years, all of the transportation projects that we have constructed locally that directly improve air quality. So this is how we, over the last 10 years, we've spent $20 million on the projects on this list here locally with those dollars. But again, the EPA does not provide credit for any of this $20 million investment. On the next page, in addition to that $20 million investment, DOT, with their other congestion mitigation air quality funds, has spent over $20 million on the Signal Interconnect project between Fairbanks and North Pole, which ties all of the signals on state roads to a traffic operations center at DOT on Pegger Road, so that they can program the signal timing, troubleshoot signal issues. But I mean, they can set the timing on these signals to a certain sequence during the middle of the day, a different sequence at rush hour or the evening or morning, and a different sequence altogether at night. So the Signal Interconnect, you can model this project out, but it has a measurable improvement to reducing vehicle delay, reducing congestion, and reducing idling at intersections. So between the two, you've got $40 million spent over the last 10 years on transportation projects that improve air quality. And so again, another reason why the EPA shouldn't be attacking us with a 53-year-old sanction that they have on the books. Then lastly, page 77 has the information on a way forward for the EPA to issue a protective finding for us. Again, at this time, they don't they don't seem interested in issuing us a protective finding. But that ultimately is our request following all the comments in this letter. So I'm happy to answer any questions, provide any clarification. I'm also looking for some direction on this last page as to any folks that you want me to copy on this letter when it gets distributed to the EPA.
All right, we'll take questions this time, but please hold your debate for a motion on the floor. Mayor Welch.
Thank you. Mr. Fox, for the protective finding, is there a time certain that they have to reply to it? Is that, how far down the road can they go in ignoring us? You know, now that we put this out to
I
them?
think indefinitely. I mean, the
Can it?
EPA will have to respond to each of these comments individually. So
Mhm.
they'll have to respond to why they would not consider issuing this protective finding or what the process would be for us,
Yeah.
for them to even consider this.
Okay.
So,
But don't they have a
Jason Olds
time
may have-
frame?
Not to my knowledge, unless Jason Olds has other information to help answer that question.
Now I
Mr.
can
Holt?
ask. I can ask. I actually have a meeting with EPA after this, but I don't know.
All right. Other questions for Mr. Fox?
Comment on who to CC, probably want to include the congressional delegation for the state. Let them know what the EPA is trying to do.
So you're saying state legislators?
Well, state and congressional.
Okay.
If I'm watching the FHWA and EPA have fights over who's gonna, whether or not they're gonna give us money or not. Could get pretty interesting.
Other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. We'll go to public comment. This is an action item. Do we have any members of the public online or in the room that wish to give comment? I don't see anyone in the room today. Do we have anyone online that wishes to give comment on the EPA letter? Go ahead and take yourself off mute if you'd like. All right, going once, going twice. Public comment period on this item is now closed. Do we have a motion on the floor, or do we have a motion to put on the floor?
Move that we go ahead and approve the letter that's presented.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Cleaver, seconded by Mayor Welch. Discussion, Mr. Cleaver?
I just have one. Jackson, you did a great job on this. It's a lot of work here. On page 72 here, your second bullet from the top. It says these period measures and so on. My only suggestion would be to retone that down just a bit. If I were reading this and I saw that it says not truly invested in helping solve the problem, even though this is 100% correct, a human being and me would take a little bit of sense to that, I think. And then miss the point that we're trying to get across. If we could just, I don't know, tone that down a little bit, I think that might be wise. And still say the same thing.
All right, further discussion, debate. Are you asking, I guess we need to have a motion on the floor to direct that use specific language? Are you willing to let Mr. Fox have leeway on that one?
I just say Jeff Jackson, and I just reword it a little bit. He knows what I'm talking about. So,
Yep.
I know my tone in this letter.
Yep. Still had a page and a half, then you still a little feisty.
Yep.
All right, further.
Words.
All right. Mr. Rudman?
I found a couple of typos. One potential typos on page 73. Down there, near the bottom here, at one point, see ADDC to have delimited or no reduction, was that supposed to be?
No. D is supposed to be deleted.
Okay. And then the other one on page 74, during the quote, none of these programs have appeared, these should be appeared.
We're at on that quote.
So that's on the quote, none of
Oh,
these
yeah.
programs have appeared. Okay. It should be appeared.
right, anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, I'm gonna say that those are clerical and clearly within Fox's ability to correct. Does that bring it back to us? All right. Further discussions, Mayor Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jackson, I want to say that in some way, I consider the tone of the letter to be spot on. And I think it's time that some of these folks, including EPA, understand why that's perturbing us at the local level. So I don't know how the heck you're supposed to say it, get out of league with the rest of your letters. So I wish you well if that's what the consent is here, but I kind of like the way it's worded. So I should share that.
I'll just add, I think it's a little tame. You could have been harsher.
This is the DEC guy. That's good. All right, further discussion, debate? Maybe I'll just add some of my thoughts here and then just kind of speak to the efforts of who we would forward this to. Yeah, Mr. Fox, I think you did do a great job on this. I know this is something that from the DEC and the local borough perspective, we've certainly been tracking pretty closely. But we haven't had, I think, a letter like this from a transportation planning agency where really the true punitive measures are felt to this tone. So I think it is spot on, and I think it does call out a number of these issues. I would say that we have some staff members that we've been working with in Senator Murkowski's office on potential changes to the Clean Air Act and other options. And so I think you outlined some really great actions that our congressional delegation can take to help support this issue. And I'll say that we worked very closely with Murkowski's office and Senator Sullivan's office on this one over the last couple of years. And I think they are looking for something to sink their teeth into. And I think you've given them some prime targets for that. So I do appreciate this, and I would certainly agree that Codell would be a great addition to this. I would say local legislators are probably more in tune with this issue than statewide legislators. I don't know if I would send it to the entire legislature.
No.
They would probably get ground canned. So I would say certainly our local folks, but I think the governor's office may appreciate this letter as well. Okay, I can have those. All right, further discussion, debate? Mr. Cleaver?
Jackson, going back to the one thing I mentioned there. We just propose one thing, these kind of measures on transportation make the occurrence, the EPA is not truly, I would use the word focusing on helping solve the problem. Brackets, i.e. efforts, work progress that we make and really work focusing there. It just gets rid of, you're not truly invested in helping solve the problem. And it takes us. That'll be my recommendation.
I'll do that. Yep. So moved by Mr. Cleaver.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Welch. Any discussion, debate on that? I'm taking some leeway that you made a motion there.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I'm not seeing any discussion on that. Mr. Fox, if you would call the roll on.
Sure. Mr. Cleaver?
Yes.
Mr. Roderman?
Yes.
Mr. Kemp?
Yeah.
Mayor Welch?
Yes.
Mayor Ward?
Yes.
Mr. Olds?
Yes.
All right. That was approved. So thank you for that quick work. Do we have any further discussion on the letter as amended? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Mr. Fox, do you call the roll on the letter as amended?
Yep. Mr. Cleaver?
Yes.
Mr. Roderman?
Yes.
Yes. Mayor Welch?
Yes.
Mayor Ward?
Yes.
Mr. Olds?
Yes.
All right, that approves our letter. Now we are on item 8B. I jumped over that one earlier. As our long and short range transit plans. This is an action item. So Mr. Fox, if you would give us the introduction, please. Yeah, absolutely. So
Corey Giorgiano in our office here has drafted a scope of services for the transit plan updates for the Fairbanks North Scarborough Max Transit System. There are two plans which are about 10 years old that we have some transit planning funds to update those. And again, Fast Planning is taking this lead role now
in our area to do the transit planning on behalf of Max Transit. So this scope of services were drafted for the two different plan updates. One is the short and long range transit plan, which looks at the overall system of fixed routes and operations at Max Transit. And then the second plan is what's called the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan, which really focuses on more on-demand services like van tran, shuttles that you see at for Raven Landing, the senior center, things like that. And that secondary plan is really for opportunities to apply for grants for some of these local nonprofits to provide those on-demand services. And in a minute here, I'm gonna have Corey just kind of give you an overview of the scope of services. But last, I just want to note that following the development of the scope of services, we did share it with the borough's community planning department as well as Max Transit staff. Both of those departments provided us feedback. We made their revisions, and we did present this to the technical committee and the bike and advisory committee, and they both recommended that the policy board approve the scope without any additional revisions or amendments to the scope. If the policy board approves this today, we will work with Randy Bailey at DOT to put out a request for proposals to hire a consultant to do this work. And we have $500,000 set aside for these plan updates. This is transit planning funds that are now that we received. These are transit planning funds that were originally issued to the borough but have gone unspent over the past 5 years. So we're using old transit planning funds to fully fund this plan development. I'll turn it over to Corey to give a little bit more specifics on what the scope includes.
Great, thanks, Jackson. You gave a pretty good overview, but I'll add some granularity to it. One of the things I want to point out is the reason that we are combining these is because there's a lot of correlation and overlap in the work that the consultant's going to have to do here. There's a big lift on updating a lot of things like demographics and where development patterns have occurred in our community over the last 10 years. So rather than putting the community through two very similar processes, we're trying to consolidate these so that when there are charrettes or workshops, that we're talking about all things transit. We're talking about transportation for the general public via Max, but then also some of our other smaller providers like Access Alaska, Boys and Girls Club, Denali Center, Parks and Rec, et cetera. So maybe just to give you sort of an overview here, the scope A is really looking at fixed route, which is our 8 bus routes that operate within the borough here and the city. That'll basically look at where the system has been when it was reconfigured in 2011 and 13, and where it can be more optimally configured for today. In the last 10 years, there have been a lot of changes and innovations in the transit world, a lot of technology changes and things like on-demand and micromobility. There's a lot more app use and software use that helps people plan trips, know exactly when buses are coming, things like that. So part of this effort is to identify what some of those technologies are that Max could be utilizing to expand ridership. As a side note, that's also one of the projects that's being submitted for CMAQ as funding to try to get out ahead of this project a little bit and get some of these technologies working, like pay on your phone type apps and ticketing. Let's see, some of the other changes too have also come as a result of COVID, and this report we're hoping will help give Max some background and information on how to better run their operations with new considerations for transmission, et cetera. We'll kind of jump through a few of the bullets here, just of notes. I think as part of the effort here, they're going to be looking at how to expand potential on-demand type services, like with operations like Lyft and Uber operating within the community, and then the possibility of what's called public on-demand, which is, see if you go down to the Anchorage area, they have like a small, almost van trans scale bus that you can call and you can utilize. So people that are in more outlying areas can get lifts into their place of work without relying on a really infrequent bus route that is running at really low capacity. So the hope is with the first one is that we really get a recommendation on a tightened up system that works for more people more frequently. Scope B then is sort of a zoom out, and it's a look at not only Max and Van Trend, but some of those other agencies that I mentioned. It's really trying to jumpstart the conversation between various organizations that are running public transit for both elderly and disabled, but then other organizations like Boys and Girls Club. The hope here is that they identify where there are redundancies and where there are gaps and try to get everybody kind of coordinated so that they're covering more people with more needs. There was my understanding, there used to be a committee or a board of some sort, Jackson. And what was that? What was they tasked
Mobility
with?
Coalition, yeah, with developing the first few renditions of this plan. So, but there's a lot of both urban and rural transit funds that these organizations can apply for, but they need an approved plan to be able to pursue them. So this is something this coordinated human services transportation plan is, there's actually on the DOT website, it'll show you the plans for all the communities throughout Alaska that have developed one of these. So they do have a template for you. But they're a very popular plan to produce, again, with the goal of utilizing this plan to pursue federal transit funding for purchase of shuttle buses, payment for their drivers and maintenance of those vehicles. You know, so there's a lot of costs that are allowable underneath those transit programs. So this will allow them to do that.
In the previous one, they identified almost like a bullet list of different projects that various agencies could go after, and then it made it really easy for applying for funding. So that's pretty much high level. I'd be happy to take any questions you guys might have.
Question?
Sorry, one last thing. The goal is to try to get this out on the street as an RFP in April, and then once it's awarded, we'd be looking at basically a 1-year turnaround period for this project to be completed. That's it.
Questions? Mr. Cleaworth?
Yeah, man, is this going to be comp plan?
No, this is not a comp plan.
It doesn't become part.
I wouldn't recommend it. All right, further questions? All right, I'm not seeing any, so we will go to public comment. Is there any members in the room or online that want to give comment? No. Anyone online that wishes to give comment on this action item? Going once, going twice. We'll close our public comment period. Do we have a motion to put on the floor for our long and short range transit plan?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adopt and forward this long and short range transit plan as presented between pages 82 and 89.
Just to clarify, this is for us to go out to bid.
Go out to bid, yeah.
Okay,
I'll second it.
so moved by Mayor Welch, seconded by Mr. Kemp. Do we have discussion? Mayor Welch?
No, I'm satisfied that, is there enough time, Corey, to get that done for us to have that by April?
I think so. Yeah, we're not anticipating much in the way of modifications. It is going to go through DOT, so we'll essentially turn this over to them as the bones of what their formal RFP becomes.
Thank you. Yeah. Further discussion, debate? Mr. Olds?
Yes, sorry, no discussion.
All right. I'm not seeing any further discussion on this item. Mr. Fox, if you would call the roll on the approval of this.
Yep. Mayor Welch.
Yes.
Mayor Ward.
Yes.
Mr. Cleaworth.
Yes.
Mr. Rutherman.
Yes.
Mr. Kemp.
Yes.
Mr. Olds.
Yes.
All right, that has been approved. That brings us to our next item, 8C, the Fast Improvement Program. It is an action item. Mr. Fox, can you give us the introduction before we go to public comment?
Yeah, as I stated in my staff report, the Bike and Ped Advisory Committee did draft a letter to forward to both the technical committee and the policy board about their desire to have construction funding for the Fast Improvement Program in federal fiscal year 2027. We have discussed this item at past meetings during development of the 2023 through 2027 Transportation Improvement Program document. The primary reason why I left out funding for this program in 2027 is due to the escalated cost of the mini street upgrade project, which is currently estimated at $12 million to take that to construction, which will take up the majority of that year's funding, as well as we will have to borrow about $3 million from a future year to make that fully funded for one construction season. So to maintain fiscal constraint in that year, budget is tight, but the Bike and Ped Committee wanted both the technical committee and policy board to take a look at that and see if there was any proposal for any amendment to our funding plan to accommodate this. Of course, there is one option. I can always to put some money into that year. I can move another project out a year, or I can just borrow more money from a future year, which we do borrow money from future years each year. It's called an advanced construction funding tool. But there kind of is a little bit of a limitation on that. We really don't want to go over 50% of your program for our small NGO here. So, and again, the technical committee recommendation to you all on this item is on the next page, page 91. So they recommended the policy board consider this request in a future amendment to the transportation improvement program. So they're basically, the recommendation is no action at this time, but let's bring it back up for discussion in a year or two once we get a little closer to 2027.
All right, so the potential action is the motion in our packet from the technical committee, page 91.
You can
potential.
That's a potential, yep, to direct me to table this for a couple of years until we get closer to 2027. You could tell me to take $1 million out of Main Street and give it to this program. You could tell me to find a project that can move out a year. You could tell me to borrow money from 2028 for 2027, so it shows up in the funding plan. I guess there's a variety of options, or you can make no motion at all and no decision here today on this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. Do we have further questions before we go to public comment? All right, I'm not seeing any. Do we have anyone in the room that wishes to give comment?
Please don't take the money from the crosswalk. And also, not knowing the process, the gentleman sitting next to me made a good point. I was assuming that the crosswalk was going to be similar to University Avenue, so that you punch a button, the lights flash. Is that the case?
No,
that was not the
It
case.
would be similar to the, they're called rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We have examples of those on Cowell Street near the library, as well as near the hospital. So it's the one on University is actually called a hawk signal. I forget what that stands for, but it's the hawk signal actually stops traffic, whereas the rectangular rapid flashing beacon just has yellow lights to bring drivers' attention to someone's crossing it. So it's that lower option.
Thank you. All right, any questions for Ms. Rissy? All right, I'm not seeing any. Let's go online. I do have Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, if you would like to provide testimony, now's your time.
Yes, so I wanted to testify on the fast improvement program on one line item. I'm looking at page 92 in your packet. And it is the bike lane striping and signing pilot program, NID 32278. I hope all of you read the report from Kittleson on that. Because when they described each road and putting bike lanes in those existing city roads, every single road except for Barnett, at least most of Barnett, is going to be restricted or constricted, changed in major ways that restrict traffic and restrict flow. You're going to lose turn lanes on some of the streets that have turn lanes. You're going to lose lane width. You might even lose a whole lane besides the turn lane on smaller streets. So I would ask you to not put this bike lane striping and signing in, that you'd amend this out before you approve the rest of the SIP. And then that $500,000 could be used for something else. And maybe it could even percolate for this 2027 year eventually. But I would like you to seriously consider the ramifications of this project. You've got, if some of you remember the College Road debacle, you guys just took that, another new instance of that out this last year from the tip, but that would have majorly hurt places like the farmers market and the fairgrounds by removing lanes in College Road. It would have been a major impediment to traffic. And so you're going to get the same kind of problem here in the city if you start shrinking roads and removing lanes. We already have, it's already tight. It's the city. It's a tight space. The bikes already have permission and the request to travel in the road. Also, I did a lot of research when the original College Road thing was up in 2014. And if you look at it, what people are saying is bike lanes being safer is not actually working out in real life. And there were a large contingent of bike users who are actually opposed because of some of the dangers of the bike lanes. It's something it would behoove you to do research on. Craig Medred, an Alaskan journalist, has actually written a lot on bike lanes and bike traffic. He's a big biker and stuff. And so anyway, in the end, I'm just asking you to remove this from the tip before you approve it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roberts. Do we have any questions from policy board members? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thank you for testimony. Do we have anyone else online that wishes to give testimony on this item today? I am not seeing anyone. Going once, going twice. And we will close our public comment period on our fast improvement program. This is a potential action item. Do we have any motions for the floor today? Mr. Dewar?
Put on the floor first. Is that something that we're going to postpone this again?
Mr. Fox, if you could maybe explain.
Yeah, so the adoption of the spreadsheet here, or funding plan, is not until next month, because we have to close the loop on the air quality analysis. So this action item here today is just for the fast improvement program. And it was really the nature of this item is the letter from the bike advisory committee. So based on the way this is written, I think amendments or any motions would need to be related to the fast improvement program and not the remainder of the funding plan. But you will have that opportunity next month to make any final changes to the transportation improvement program before you adopt it.
I'd like to bring up a few things here, maybe in preparation for next month. First, Lance, to address what you said. Yeah, we at the city also have some concerns on how to do striping and signing or where not to do them. And once you do that striping, there's an expectation it's 365 days a year. And the city is very protective of that, going, no, this will be seasonal at most. Because we need some of that space for snow storage in the wintertime, unless we can't do our job. So I think we internally at the city have to do a few things on that to see what the scope of this project will be. And all else I can do is leave it there. The second question I have is for Jackson. So at the last meeting, we put back in Barnett as illustrative. Normally, I think illustrative projects get shoved at the end of these things. It's not on here now.
No, I've not updated this yet. In March, you'll see Barnett in there.
Okay. And then my last one is on the subject of the day, which is on the crosswalk. When I'm looking at the improvement program here and the dollar amounts, is there a breakdown for us as to how much is going for DOT engineering to do this, or what that project is going to be as opposed to the Aztec Road?
Here, I'll share some numbers with you. So Aztec is roughly $2 million. So the budget is about 2.3 million. The crosswalk is 200,000. The dog park is 100,000. So the math's pretty simple. So 2 million for Aztec, 100,000 for dog park, and then 200,000 for the crosswalk at College Road. And DOT has spent under $200,000 on that design.
And
for all of it,
it's Mr. Reese, right?
Yes.
Go ahead, Reese. Sit together and piano recitals, didn't we?
I'm sorry?
Used to sit together in piano recitals.
Oh, that was my brother and his son. He's the piano player, yes.
The concern I had, and the policy board is aware of what I brought up, but I'm going to share with you, and I was hoping others would stick around, but they did not. Is on a 4-lane road. I've had 2 incidences in the States where I went through one of those crosswalks, and fortunately I never hit anybody, but I didn't even know they were there. Because the signalization's on the side of the road, that was blocked by a large vehicle that was already slowed down or parked, I don't know which. I'm on the inside lane, I go plowing through the thing. And I never would have seen anyone in front of that truck anyway. I didn't know where he was stopped there for, but we saw no signs because they're totally blocked from visibility. So to me, there's a real scare factor. If we think we're buying public safety here, I'm not so sure unless the design is more like what this gentleman described over here, or like University Avenue. Now we're getting at the big bucks, I know. So I thought I would ask DOT your infinite wisdom on this and engineering. If they really think that just the Hawk system will work, it just seems to me, from a logistical point of view, it may be very dangerous.
Yeah, well, not getting too far into it, but it's definitely a bit safer if we had 2 lanes in a middle turn lane, right? There's less traffic, less chance for people to get, have interactions with public walking across the road. The one sticky spot about this project at the farmer's market is it's not at an intersection, so it's not a logical stopping point. So we're going to have to put, like what Jackson said there, we're going to have to put up the flashers, and they do work. I mean, they're proven. It's not the Cadillac, but it's a good one, and it will work. But there's an inherent risk there that quite frankly, that the people that are walking across the crosswalk need to make sure they're looking at those cars, and they know. I mean, you got to make sure, because somebody might blow through it, and God forbid anybody gets hurt. So. I don't know. I mean, it's the crosswalk is definitely warranted. I've talked to our traffic engineer. It's passed all 6 criteria for a need that our traffic manual has, and so it's definitely warranted. But it's there's always an inherent risk. There's an inherent risk walking across the crosswalk at an intersection as well. Sometimes people don't care what color the light is. So.
Yeah, I want a logistical problem. I don't see how they can cure that. So I don't know. I don't want to step on DOT's feet or engineering over there, but I just see a fundamental flaw of the plan.
In the crosswalk, you mean?
Yeah, that 4-lane design like that, because if you block that, because people don't see it, it's going to be very dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way. Thinking about that section of road, I don't think there's a real good way for anybody to block it unless they're parked on the sidewalk. Probably the most the thing that could get you is if somebody's actually crossing and the lights are flashing and cars in the right lane have stopped and you're in the left lane not paying attention. That could be a problem. And people are crossing and you're not noticing it. That'd be about the whole time. But there's nowhere right in there. It's road, sidewalk, and then the sign, the flashing sign will be right there. So it should be pretty visible for the most part. And that's usually how we make them. You make them as visible as possible, right? With as least a small amount of obstructions in the way as possible.
Just one more example. Passing lane that time I was on. I had a semi on the outside lane, on the inside lane. I pretty well paralleled him all the way down. I never saw the sign that said passing lane ends until he ran me off the road. He was bigger than I was. But it was there, but they're parallel, you just don't see it. And so, that's my fear. I don't have the intentions of killing the project, but I'm just saying that I worry about this. I worry about it. I just don't think for an affordable, I think like the gentleman said over here, that design, which is a lot more costly, and I know that. It might behoove us to wait until we get some bucks to do it right. It's like I wouldn't want you stepping in our shoes at the city and engineering. I just think you could relay that. That's all.
Yeah, we can definitely. Did you get you probably didn't get a cost out of Pam or anything like that for the step up, did you?
About 600,000 versus 200,000.
So triple the cost.
Can I make a comment?
Comment's been closed unfortunately, but thank you.
Yeah, time.
Well,
So do we have any additional discussion on this?
I think that, just so you know, just because we will, prove it or disprove it today, it doesn't mean that the design is finalized by this the policy board. The design can be, if we decide later on better something like that.
All right, so just for fresh my memory, we do not have a motion.
We don't.
On the floor. So I'll leave it open for another short while here. If someone wants to make a motion, we don't have to at this point.
And just one more comment on what the PED committee is recommending here. I would like to buy some time on that because we need to get together as a city and talk about Minnie Street, the scope of that project. And we need to have that discussion. I think internally we're somewhat at odds on the scope of that. And a lot of that has to do with the south side of the room and whether that becomes a sidewalk. That's what I think is holding it up. I think that's what's generating cost, and if we eliminate that, that might free up the money anyway to solve what we're talking about. But we haven't had those discussions yet. I'm pushing hard. That'll happen in the next month or so.
Further discussion, debate, motions? Maybe just food for thought I'll add to this. So I know we have the request from the committee in regards to FY27. We also have, that's the year Minnie Street for construction. That is a number of years away. This is kind of one of the first times we've taken this big of an approach, or this long of an approach, view of the approach, I guess if I said that right, for transportation planning. I think it's great, but the sense of urgency, I would say, is more so with this next fiscal year and the year after. So as I look at it, we've got design money that's on Minnie Street, but I'm not necessarily concerned with, to the same degree that the committee is concerned about pedestrian monies in FY27. A lot can change between now and then. A lot will change based on any construction season in Fairbanks. I think we know that. So you've got a number of them to happen between now and then. So I still feel like with the tip as it is right now, we've got room to make adjustments and take up considerations. I know Mr. Clearworth, you said that the city's talking about bike lanes, as well as Minnie Street and others. So I think we've got room to take that up between now and the next time we meet, and then even after that, we can make amendments. So LEPA says we can. All right, further discussion, debate, any action items or any motions? I'm not seeing any, so I will say that this item is closed. That brings us to item 9, other issues. We have no other issues, which brings us to item 10, informational items. Starting off with item 8, 2020 census update and our boundary change. It's page 99, Mr. Fox, if you would, please.
Yeah, Lydia's created a really interesting map for all of our committees to look at here. What this map does is it highlights the differences between the urbanized area boundaries that are drawn by the Census Bureau. So it compares the 2020 census boundary to the new the 2010 census boundary to the new 2020 census boundary. And she highlights the areas in which our urban area, which we do our planning efforts within, areas of our community where it grew, and areas where we have receded based on because the Census Bureau is using a new definition now on how they draw our urbanized area boundary. It's based on a housing density rather than a population density. So there's a lot of additions. You'll see that we're going to be pulling in a big portion of Farmers Loop Road, a big portion of Chena Ridge, and then down towards Eielson there, we have inched awfully close now to Moose Creek and Eielson Air Force Base, which allows us to do what they call a hop and a jump. And we can have Eielson Air Force Base and Moose Creek within our planning area boundary. So the dashed line on there is what is the boundary that we're currently using, because we have to take the census information and project what we think will be urbanized over the next 20 years. So we are going to initiate a process, which will take a number of months here to kind of redraw our boundary with this information. But again, we are looking at an expansion in area of our boundary, bringing in more population. And there's a long exercise that Lydia's going to have to go through here in this boundary development. And there's going to be a lot of public open house events and stakeholder meetings in some of these areas of town as we redraw this boundary based on the census changes here. We do have a deadline. So the Federal Highway Administration requires that we adopt a new boundary by December of this year. And it's not just us adopting the boundary, it has to be signed off by the governor's office. So we hope to have this process unfold here through the spring and summer, so that before fall, we have a proposal to you all adopting the new boundary, getting that to the governor's office for signature. So anyways, I can stare at this map. Seems like for a couple hours and, looking at what we lost and what got added. But this is kind of the first step at looking at the data. That's all I have now.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Fox? All right, I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on to item B under informational items such as our obligations and offsets. Mr. Fox, please.
Yep. No new obligations over the past month. On the offset side, page 102. The technical committee spent the rest of our offsets. So we're at zero now, next page. Yeah, we're at zero. And I talked to project control and they don't have any project closures in the queue at this time. So over the next month or two, I don't expect receiving new offsets. So I'm just gonna cross my fingers this spring that all of our bids come in low. May not happen. I'd be bringing forward a chip amendment sooner than later if the bids come back in high at projects, but I believe it is only 2 bid packages. It's pretty small a year on the construction side for us.
All right,
that's all I have.
Any questions on obligations and offsets? I'm not seeing any. That brings us to policy board member comments. We'll start online first. We'll go around the room. Mr. Olds, do you have any comments today?
Sure. Jackson, I'll try and follow up with you if I can find any information out about the protective findings from EPA. And then I separately wrote to see if FAST is okay with DEC also incorporating some of those comments that you have in the letter that we approved today. I think that they add to arguments for any sort of arbitrary and capricious actions from EPA and would be good to include duplicatively for our administrative record. So that's all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Olds. Mr. Rodeman? Mr. Kemp?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine.
Mr. Cleaver? Okay, and maybe, and if I get the date wrong, Mr. Olds, please correct me. I believe EPA just announced that they're going to do an in-person public comment period on the disapproval
March
or partial?
7th. Yes,
March
2 to 8 p.m. with a lunch break at 5 to 5:30, and it's at the Wood Building on the Fairbanks, the University of Fairbanks campus.
Yes, Center, yes.
Which center?
Yes.
I can forward that to the policy committee. I have the announcement.
All right. Sounds great. That's all I had. So with that, it brings us to the end of our meeting and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for your time.
Sorry we couldn't give you another bite.